Hello everyone! My name's Lauren and I'm an actor with the Octagon Theatre. The Octagon StoryMaker sessions are great opportunities for children and the grown-ups who look after them to enjoy original stories told by an actor with musical moments to help bring the stories to life. At the moment, you can't come to the Octagon to enjoy StoryMakers, so StoryMakers is going to come to you. We've adapted some of our StoryMaker sessions so that you guys can enjoy them from the safety of your own home. I'm going to be here telling the stories from the safety of my home, and afterwards you guys can follow the link to take part in a fabulous craft activity once you've listened. So stay safe everybody, and we can't wait to see you at the Octagon soon. The Ice Queen. The Ice Queen lived all alone in an ice palace many miles away from other people. She'd lived like this for as long as anyone could remember. The land around her palace and the country nearest to it was cold and barren and bare. Of course, the Ice Queen was very lonely, and the lonelier she became, the colder it became in the land around her and the country nearby. After the longest time, the people in the land of the Ice Queen realised that they hadn't seen spring for many years. Instead of seeing friends or neighbours, the Ice Queen would watch people from her magic mirror made entirely of ice. It was very cold where the Ice Queen lived, and nothing grew anywhere. The ground around the palace was frozen and brittle, and it seemed to get colder every day. Each morning the Ice Queen would look into the mirror and watch the people of the land talking, singing and laughing together, and she sighed, and a cold, deep breath of loneliness. Each morning as she sighed, the frost spread further across the land. One day, when the wind was particularly bitter and the sky was dark with frost, the Ice Queen saw a boy and a girl in her mirror. The boy and the girl were as friendly as friends could be. The girl was called Gerda and the boy was called Kai. They spent all of their time together. Their houses were so close that they could wave to one another from their bedroom windows. And on the frozen ground beneath their houses and all around the house, nothing ever grew. The Ice Queen could see how happy Kai and Gerda were, but this just made her sad. One day, she was so upset watching them laughing and playing together that she took her mirror made of ice and threw it against the wall of her palace. It smashed into millions of little pieces of ice and was swept away by the wind and carried all over the world. Anyone who got a piece of ice stuck in their eye could be changed in a second. When they were changed, they could only see the bad and sad in the world, and so they became sad and lonely. The bits of ice from the mirror swirled and whirled towards the village where Kai and Gerda lived. Without her mirror, the Ice Queen was sad that she could no longer see the boy and the girl. She was sadder now that she couldn't see them than when she was when she could see them happy and playing. She took a big, deep, icy breath and looked around at the icy land beside her. She'd never felt so lonely. She would have to find Kai and Gerda for herself. She would have to leave the palace. Many miles away, Kai and Gerda were sat in Gerda's bedroom, watching the bare ground outside. They desperately wanted things to grow in the ground, but as usual, it was so cold that nothing was peeping through the frozen dewdrops. "What will make things grow?" Gerda and Kai asked Gerda's grandmother one night before bedtime. "It's so cold all the time, and I long to see the flowers and trees." "Just be patient," said Gerda's grandmother. "Sing softly to the earth, and remember this song. In the winter it always snows, and nothing it seems ever grows. But remember the spring when the whole world glows, and the patient seeds become a red rose. And when you sing with joy and glee, the flowers bloom for all to see." That night, Gerda and Kai went to bed dreaming of the warm spring. The next day, Gerda and Kai were going sledging on a hill just outside of the town. It was snowing heavily, so they didn't notice the tiny bits of ice swirling around in the air. And as they climbed up the hill together, suddenly, without warning, a shard of the Ice Queen's ice mirror flew into Kai's eye, and in an instant, Kai's heart grew cold. "Do you want to go first?" Gerda asked Kai. "Who cares?" said Kai. "I hate sledging. It's stupid." Kai stormed off, carrying his sledge with him. Gerda called him back, but he ignored her and kept on walking. Gerda had never seen Kai like this before, and she was very upset. She ran back home to tell her grandma what had happened. Kai was trampling through the snow when up ahead he could see a figure coming closer and closer. It was a beautiful lady, dressed all in silver and white, and she was floating slightly above the ground. It was the Ice Queen. "Come with me, child," the Ice Queen said, and she put her hand on Kai's shoulder. Suddenly, in an instant, Kai was freezing. He barely noticed though, and soon he forgot all about Gerda. He climbed aboard and the Ice Queen pulled on the reins. "To my palace we go," the Ice Queen cried, and they disappeared out of sight into a snowstorm. That night, Gerda watched Kai's window, waiting for him to return home, but there was no sign of him. Gerda couldn't sleep, worrying about where her best friend could be. Winter became bitter. The nights grew longer and still there was no sign of Kai. One morning, Gerda told her grandmother that she had to find her friend. "You are a wise and brave girl," said Gerda's grandmother, "and I know that you'll find him. Just remember that song I taught you. In the winter it always snows, and nothing it seems ever grows. But remember the spring when the whole world glows, and the patient seeds become a red rose. And when you sing with joy and glee, the flowers bloom for all to see." Gerda kissed her grandma goodbye and set off on her journey. Gerda was walking for hours and hours when she started to feel tired. She stopped for a rest next to a large oak tree. She started to drift off to sleep when caw, caw came from the branches which woke her up. "Who's there?" Gerda called. Down swooped a raven and landed on Gerda's hand. "Caw! Good day! How can I help? Caw!" "Oh, I'm looking for my friend. He's a boy, he's very smart, and he likes to climb trees," said Gerda. "Caw!" said the raven. "I think I know the boy you speak of, but he lives in the royal palace now." "You must take me to him immediately," said Gerda. "If you say so, caw!" said the raven. Gerda followed the raven to a huge castle at the edge of the forest. The raven reached one of the towers and pecked away at the door until the lock popped open. Gerda then crept up the stairs and reached the bedroom. She opened the door carefully and saw someone with red hair, like Kai, sleeping in the bed. She moved closer and closer until, "I say, who goes there?" said the boy, who wasn't a boy at all, but a man, and it certainly wasn't Kai. I thought you were someone else, Your Majesty," Gerda replied. "I'm very sorry." The prince was not happy with this explanation. "Guards!" he called, and a fleet of knights swept into the room ready to arrest Gerda. "Caw! Stop!" said the raven. "The girl can explain." And so Gerda told them all about the story of Kai and how he disappeared, and how sad she was without him, and how all she wanted to do was to decorate their tree together. The prince started to cry, and he turned to the nearest guard. "I say," said the prince, whose name was Harry, "draw up my finest horse and carriage, and tell the driver to take this girl wherever she needs." "Thank you," said Gerda. "Thank you so much." "I say, don't mention it," said the prince. "Good luck," said Prince Harry's wife, who was American and very beautiful. It was a very fine horse and carriage that Gerda found herself in, and they'd been trotting along for quite some time when out of some bushes jumped a small girl wearing a sailing hat and an eye patch, and she had a parrot perched on her shoulder. She was a land pirate. "Give us all you've got," said the girl. "This is all I have," said Gerda. "I don't believe you," said the girl. Gerda hopped down from the carriage and told the girl all about her missing friend and how desperate she was to find him. "Well, miss, I'm very sorry we upset you, but I don't think we can help," said the pirate. I can help, miss," said the parrot on the girl's shoulder. "Be quiet, Featherweather," said the pirate. "Please," said Gerda. "Boy, brown hair, tall. Yeah, I saw him about 3 weeks ago. He was on the Ice Queen's sleigh." The pirate girl froze. "Who?" said Gerda. "The Ice Queen," said the land pirate. "She's the loneliest woman in all the world. She lives in Lapland," said a voice from the bushes, and out trotted a reindeer with antlers the size of tree branches. And do you know how to get to Lapland?" asked Gerda. "Why, yes, I do," said the reindeer, "for that's where I lived before all of this lot came along." The pirate girl folded her arms, and she put her head down, and after a moment's silence, she cleared her throat and said, "You can take Anthony. He's the reindeer." "Oh, really?" said Gerda. "You don't mind?" "Nah," replied the land pirate. "Looks like you need him more than I do." Gerda gave the girl a great big hug, but the pirate pushed Gerda off. "Get off," she said, "and don't come back until you find him." The pirate girl rubbed Anthony's nose and wrapped them up some bread and honey for the journey. "Are you ready?" said Anthony, as Gerda climbed onto his back, and before she had a chance to reply, they were charging through the snow together. It felt like days and days that they'd been travelling when Gerda looked up at the sky and saw the most magnificent sight. Bright colours flashing and dancing against the black cloth of night time. It was as if the sky was having a party. "The Northern Lights," said Anthony, "the most beautiful thing in the world, and a sign that we're nearly home." For miles around, Gerda saw nothing but white. She wasn't sure where the sky met the ground, or how far away they were from the Snow Queen's palace. She was busy thinking about this when Anthony stopped so quickly that Gerda fell off him headfirst into the snow. In front of her was a tiny hut with a window, a chimney, and not much else. Anthony rapped on the door with his antlers, and an old woman opened the door. She was hunched over a walking stick, and a cauldron bubbled behind her. "Anthony? Oh, you came back." "Yes, oh wise one, I did," Anthony said. "And we need your help. My friend here needs help rescuing her friend from the Ice Queen. Can you make her some sort of potion to help her on her way?" And while the old woman thought about this, Anthony explained to Gerda that they were actually standing in front of the most powerful potion brewer in all the land. And eventually, the old woman broke the silence. "No, I can't," she said. "What?" said Anthony. But nothing," said the old woman. "No potion or spell that I make will ever be as strong as the magic that girl has inside of her, for she has a strong and loving heart. And if she cannot defeat the Ice Queen, then nothing can. Anthony, when you get to the gates of the palace, you must leave the girl there. She'll be able to do the rest. Trust me." Gerda had never felt so unsure in her entire life. Not wanting to appear scared, though, she smiled at the old woman and climbed back onto Anthony's back. So huge were the gates to the palace that Gerda could see them for a long time before she reached them. She jumped off Anthony's back and stood in front of them. "Good luck," said Anthony, and he bowed before Gerda. Gerda walked to the gate, stood in front of them. They looked frozen shut. "I've come to see the Ice Queen," said Gerda, and the gates blew open and she walked in. Gerda found herself in the courtyard of the palace. Everything was made entirely of ice, from the floor to the walls to the ceiling. She tiptoed quietly and pushed against a door that towered over her. She fell into the room and looked up, and ahead of her was the Ice Queen, and by her feet was Kai, lying, and he was frozen still as a statue. He looked fast asleep. "You came." "I always hoped you would," said the Ice Queen. "I have been looking for more company. And you two always seem to have such a good time together." "What have you done to Kai?" asked Gerda. "Nothing," said the Queen. "All I did was hold his hand. But every time I held his hand, he froze a little bit more. One day he just froze over completely. Everything freezes here." "He needs to come home with me," said Gerda. "I haven't hurt your friend," said the Queen. "I promise." And Gerda crept in closer. "Wake him up," said Gerda. "Please." "I can't," said the Ice Queen. "I've tried everything." Gerda bent down next to Kai. The Queen started to look nervous. "Don't get too close, or you'll freeze over too, and then there really will be nobody left." Gerda didn't know what to do. The old woman had told her that she had the power to save Kai, but how could she? She was just one little girl. She tried thinking very hard and remembered all the good times that she and Kai had shared together, playing in the snow, sledging and singing and laughing together. And she remembered all the songs that her grandma had told them both. That's it! The song that her grandma had sung to her all those months ago. "In the winter it always snows, and nothing it seems ever grows. But remember the spring when the whole world glows, and the patient seeds become a red rose. And when you sing with joy and glee, the flowers bloom for all to see." Gerda loved that song so much that without realising it, she'd started to cry happy tears. The Queen spotted this and said gently, "Don't cry, child, for you'll never be lonely here. We'll always have each other." As Gerda's single tear dropped onto Kai, an incredible thing happened. The ice that covered Kai slowly started to melt away, and the piece of ice mirror flew out from his eye. Gerda was so very happy to see this that she cried more and more. "Wake up, Kai!" said Gerda. "Wake up!" Gerda held Kai in her arms, whispering his name. His eyes blinked and his lips started to move. "Gerda, is that you?" he said. "Yes," said Gerda. "Yes, it is, and we're going home." Just then, Gerda looked over at the Ice Queen and couldn't believe her eyes. The Ice Queen's icy skin was melting. It melted and melted until she became a human being, just like you and me. She wore a splendid green gown and a crown of beautiful yellow flowers. The Ice Queen checked to see that she was real and not just dreaming. She looked down at herself in amazement and then up at Gerda and Kai. "May I come with you?" said the Queen. "Of course," said Gerda. The Queen held onto her hand, and for the first time ever, nobody froze. The Ice Queen had a warm feeling in her heart. Gerda then climbed onto Anthony's back, while Kai and the Queen sat in their carriage, and the four of them set off across the snow. It was a long time before they saw any signs of life. But one day, Gerda saw the sledging hill in front of them. "We've made it!" she cried. And then they ran to Gerda's house, shouting and singing. Gerda's grandma came rushing out when she heard the noise. "My wonderful granddaughter," she said, and she hugged Gerda close to her, and just in time too, for it looks like spring has finally arrived. Gerda and Kai looked to where their grandma was pointing, and to their delight, they saw the ground between their houses was covered in flowers, a carpet of red and yellow and blues that shimmered and shone in the sun. The Ice Queen looked in amazement at the flowers which covered the ground. She breathed in the beautiful scent and felt warm for the first time in a long time. She bent down to look at a bright yellow daffodil. It smelled crisp and bright. She was about to touch the stalk when she felt a little afraid. What if her icy touch spoiled the flowers? Gerda saw her pause and smiled at the Ice Queen. "Go on," said Gerda. "You won't harm it." Slowly, the Ice Queen stretched her hand and clasped the daffodil. She felt the warmth of the sun on her arms and the crunchy greenness of the daffodil stalk. The flower didn't turn cold, and neither did she. She felt warmer than she ever had. She looked up at Kai and Gerda and smiled. They smiled back. Gerda's grandmother then came to stand with them. "It was a long time coming," she said, with her arms around Gerda and Kai, "but it looks like spring is finally here." The end.